At 12:04 a.m., Se Jin-wook ordered his own compound sealed, not because of an attack, because someone had whispered her name. The moment it happened, 3 men in the security room reached for their weapons out of instinct and stopped when Jin-wook slowly turned his head. "Who said it?" he asked. No one answered. They didn't need to. The silence told him everything. Only 5 people in the world even knew she existed, and one of them had just decided to sell that knowledge. "Cut the lights," Jin-wook said. "But sir," "Now." The compound went dark. In the confusion, gunfire erupted at the outer gate. Jin-wook didn't flinch. His gaze was already locked on the monitor showing the underground level, the only place in his empire that had never been raided. "Seal the corridor," he ordered. "If anyone follows me, shoot them." That command scared his men more than the gunfire, because the underground corridor led to the secret he had murdered to protect. The elevator descended. Jin-wook checked his watch. If he was too late, the consequences wouldn't just destroy him, they would destroy the city. The doors opened. She was standing in the center of the room, barefoot, unarmed, 8 months pregnant. When she saw him, her face didn't change, but her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "They know," she said. Jin-wook crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, shielding her with his body like bullets were already flying. "No," he said, "they suspect." A violent explosion rocked the ceiling. Her voice shook. "Jin-wook, if they confirm it—" "They won't," he said, but both of them knew the truth. If his enemies discovered who she was, they wouldn't negotiate. They wouldn't ransom her. They would make an example so brutal the entire underworld would remember it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and see it through to the end. We're always curious, where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. Above them, alarms screamed. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Sir," his lieutenant said, "they've issued a demand." Jin-wook closed his eyes. "What do they want?" There was a pause. "They want you to bring the woman upstairs alive." Jin-wook opened his eyes, and for the first time in his reign, the most feared man in Korea had no move that didn't end in blood. The explosion above them wasn't random. Jin-wook knew that instantly. It was measured, controlled, a warning shot meant to say, "We're already inside." He pulled her closer, angling his body so she was shielded by instinct, not calculation. For years, men had speculated about what could make Se Jin-wook hesitate. Now, if they could see him, they would understand. "What do they know?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, breath shallow. "Enough to come this far." That was too much already. The intercom crackled again. "Sir," Min-jae said, strain leaking into his usually iron voice. "They've breached the south stairwell. They're moving deliberately. No insignia, no chatter." "Professionals," he muttered. "They want control, not chaos." Her fingers tightened in his coat. "You said no one knew where I was." "No one did," he replied, and then corrected himself. "No one who mattered." The truth sat heavy between them. Jin-wook reached for the secure panel on the wall and keyed in a code that had never been used. The floor beneath them hummed faintly. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Moving you," he said. "If they reach this level, this room becomes a coffin." The wall behind the bed slid open, revealing a narrow passage lit with dim blue lights. Her eyes widened. "You built all this for me?" "For the child," he corrected automatically. She studied his face. "You didn't even know her name yet." Before he could answer, Min-jae's voice cut in again, sharper now. "Sir, they're broadcasting. Open channel." Jin-wook hesitated for half a second. Then he said, "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm, amused, and indisputably familiar. "Still hiding in the dark, Jin-wook?" Her breath hitched. Jin Wook's jaw tightened. Chairman Park. Park Hyun-soo chuckled. You always were predictable. Power, silence, shadows. Did you really think you could disappear something so valuable? You're trespassing, Jin Wook said evenly. Leave now and I'll let you keep breathing. A pause. Then laughter. You sealed your own exits. You isolated your men. You walked straight to her. That wasn't strategy. That was panic. She whispered, He knows. Park continued, voice smooth as oil. Bring her upstairs, Jin Wook. Let everyone see what you've been protecting all this time, or I start pulling your empire apart piece by piece. Min Jae cut in urgently. Sir, financial servers are under attack. Shell companies are being frozen in real time. Park laughed again. Tick-tock. Jin Wook said nothing. Inside, calculations collided with something far more dangerous, instinct. How long do we have? She whispered. Minutes. And if you give them to me? They won't stop, he answered honestly. They never do. Park's voice dropped, losing its playfulness. Last chance, come upstairs. Midnight confessions are very fashionable right now. The channel went dead. Silence swallowed the room. She pulled away from Jin Wook slowly, eyes searching his face. You always said there were no clean choices in your world. He didn't deny it. Then don't pretend this is one, she continued quietly. If they see me, they'll use me forever. If they don't, they'll burn everything you've built. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. What exactly are you? He asked softly. She let out a shaky breath. I was never supposed to be. That answer terrified him more than any threat. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, closer now, too close. Min Jae's voice came again, barely controlled. Sir, internal security reports movement from the west stairwell. Someone disabled the biometric locks from inside. Jin Wook's eyes hardened. Who? He asked. A pause. Deputy Director Han. The name landed like a bullet. Han, a man who had eaten at his table, a man who had sworn loyalty with blood. She whispered, You trusted him. Yes, Jin Wook said quietly. Then colder, that was my mistake. He turned back to her. We're leaving. Where? Somewhere they can't follow, he said. But once we do this, there's no coming back, no shadows, no secrecy. She nodded slowly. I stopped hiding the moment I chose to keep her. A distant door slammed open. Shouts followed. Min Jae shouted through the comms, Sir, they've reached the lower level. Jin Wook activated the passage. The floor beneath them shifted silently. As they moved, she looked up at him. If we survive this, they'll know what you gave up for us. He met her gaze, unwavering. Let them. The passage sealed above them, just as gunfire erupted in the room they had left behind. The underground carriage shot forward into darkness, and for the first time, Jin Wook wasn't running to protect power.
He was running to protect the truth. The underground carriage slowed as the tunnel widened, lights flickering on in staggered intervals. Jin Wook stood braced, one arm wrapped protectively around her, the other gripping the rail as the vehicle came to a silent stop. Where are we? She asked. Below the river, he replied, a contingency I never wanted to use. The doors slid open. They stepped into a cavernous chamber carved from reinforced stone, monitors lining the walls, maps of the city glowing softly. This wasn't an escape route. It was a command center. Min Jae was already there, blood streaking his sleeve, eyes sharp despite the chaos. They're flooding the upper levels, he said. Park's people and Han's combined, media drones too. Jin Wook's gaze snapped to the screens. Live footage. His compound, his men disarmed, Chairman Park standing calmly under floodlights, flanked by armed guards and cameras. Park smiled into the lens. Seo Jin-wook has something to confess tonight. The words hit harder than any bullet. They're turning this into theater, Min-jae said. If they don't get you, they'll get public approval to tear everything down. Jin-wook didn't answer. He was watching her reflection in the glass. You need to tell me now, he said quietly, because once I step into the light, there's no erasing it. She swallowed, then nodded. My name is Yoon Ara, or at least it was. The name meant nothing. She took his hand and placed it over her abdomen. But my father's name will. Min-jae stiffened. Sir. Jin-wook's chest tightened. Say it. Yoon Dae-sung, former Minister of Defense, the man whose suicide ended 3 investigations and started the purge. Silence crushed the room. Yoon Dae-sung, the architect of reforms that threatened half the underworld, the man Jin-wook had watched die on the evening news, body pulled from a river, scandal buried within hours. You're supposed to be dead, Jin-wook said slowly. I was, at least officially. Min-jae exhaled sharply. Park used that purge to consolidate power. And Han helped, Jin-wook said, pieces locking together with sickening clarity. She nodded. They killed my father. I ran, changed my name, disappeared. Jin-wook stared at her, mind racing. You didn't know who I was when we met, and when I realized who you were, it was already too late. He remembered now, the timing, the coincidence, the way Park had once asked casually if Jin-wook believed in inherited sins. You married the devil, he murmured. You married the man who never asked where I came from, she said softly. The monitors flared brighter. Park's voice boomed through the chamber. We know she's alive, Jin-wook. We know what she carries, and if you don't come out now, I'll release everything. Min-jae turned. Sir, if her identity goes public, she becomes a weapon, Jin-wook finished. Park leaned toward the camera. Bring her out, or I'll let the world decide whether your unborn child deserves to exist. The threat wasn't subtle. It was annihilation. Jin-wook closed his eyes. This was the choice every powerful man avoided until it arrived anyway. Protect the system, or destroy it to protect one life. He opened his eyes and made his decision. Prepare the broadcast, he said. Min-jae froze. Sir, I'm going upstairs. She grabbed his arm. Jin-wook, I won't bring you, he said firmly. I'll bring the truth. He turned to Min-jae. Pull every file, every transaction, every quiet execution Park ordered under my name. Release it all. That would burn everything, Min-jae said. Yes, that's the point. Above them, Park smiled confidently into the cameras. Moments later, that smile vanished. The screens split. Footage flooded the broadcast. Shell companies, offshore accounts, orders signed by Park and Han, bribes, assassinations disguised as accidents. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jin-wook stepped into frame. No guards, no weapons, just a man in black, standing alone. I am Seo Jin-wook, he said calmly, and tonight I'm ending this. Park shouted from off-camera, Cut it now. Jin-wook continued, You feared me because I let you. You called me a monster so you wouldn't look at yourselves. Police sirens wailed in the distance. I protected someone you had no right to touch, and for that, you came for me. He paused. And you lost. Park lunged toward him. Gunshots rang out. Screams followed. The feed cut abruptly. In the underground chamber, she covered her mouth. Minutes crawled like hours. Then Min-jae's comm crackled. Sir, he's alive. Park is in custody. Han attempted to flee. He didn't make it. Relief hit her knees. Jin Wook's voice came through, calm but altered. "It's done." She whispered his name. "There will be warrants, trials, confiscations. I won't walk away from this." "I know," she said. "But our daughter will," he replied. That was the only outcome that mattered. She closed her eyes, tears spilling freely. Above ground, the world watched as the most feared man in Korea dismantled his own empire in real time. And somewhere between the headlines and the sirens, a legend died. Morning arrived without ceremony. No sunrise music, no triumphant headlines scrolling across screens. Just gray light bleeding into a city that hadn't slept. Seo Jin Wook sat alone in a holding room with walls too clean to hide anything. His hands rested calmly on the table. No cuffs yet. That would come later, after the paperwork, after the prosecutors finished arguing over who had jurisdiction over the ruins of his empire. Across the city, news anchors struggled to keep their voices steady. Unprecedented collapse, years of corruption exposed in minutes. Seo Jin Wook's voluntary surrender. They replayed the footage again and again. The moment he stepped into the light, the moment Park realized the game had ended, the moment the myth cracked. But no one showed what came after. No one showed the silence. A door opened softly. Min Jae stepped in, no longer dressed like a lieutenant, just a man with exhaustion carved into his face. "They're transferring you soon," he said. "High security facility, temporary." Jin Wook nodded. "And her?" "She's gone," Min Jae replied. "As planned. Different country, different documents, no digital trail." Jin Wook's shoulders eased just slightly. "Did anyone follow?" he asked. "No," Min Jae said. "They won't even know where to start." Jin Wook allowed himself one breath of relief. Just one. "Good," he said. "Then it was worth it." Min Jae hesitated. "They're calling you a monster and a martyr in the same sentence." Jin Wook almost smiled. "That's progress." Min Jae swallowed. "She wanted me to tell you that she understands." Jin Wook closed his eyes. "She said she'll tell your daughter who you really were, not what they'll write." That was the moment the weight finally landed. Not the prison, not the loss of power, but the knowledge that his child would grow up knowing his name and still be free. "Thank you," Jin Wook said. The guards arrived minutes later. Steel doors, formal voices, procedure. As they led him down the corridor, cameras flashed from behind glass walls. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. "Do you regret it? Were you afraid? Was she worth it?" He didn't look back. Across an ocean, in a quiet coastal town where no one knew his face, Yoon Ara stood by a window, one hand resting over her stomach. The television was off. She didn't need to hear them say his name. She felt him in the stillness, in the absence of fear, in the quiet that came from knowing the hunters had turned on each other. She whispered, "You kept your promise." Years later, people would argue about Seo Jin Wook. Some would say he was a criminal who turned on his own kind to save himself. Others would say he was a tyrant who finally found a line he wouldn't cross. But the truth lived somewhere no documentary could reach. It lived in a child who would never know the sound of gunfire, in a man who chose to disappear into consequence rather than rule through terror. In his final statement to the court, Jin Wook said only one sentence: "I protected what mattered when power stopped mattering." No apology, no justification, just truth. And when the cell door closed behind him for the first time, Seo Jin Wook didn't feel fear. He felt something far more unfamiliar: peace.